Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 9 playthrough of the Chicago Blackhawks. We are in the early stages of the 2029 to 2030 regular season, and the Blackhawks are off to a really nice start. A 27-4 record, 44 points, which is the best in the Western Conference and the best in all of hockey at this point. So we look like we are in decent shape to potentially win the President's Trophy for the second consecutive season. The big goal, of course, is to win the Stanley Cup, something that we've only done once during this playthrough back in the 2024 season, 23-24 season. So the goal is certainly to get a second Stanley Cup this year. And as I mentioned, when we look at the broader standings, we're in as good shape as anybody to do that. Right now, the team is a little bit banged up, particularly our front line. Our star left defenseman, Quinn Hughes, has been banged up for about 3 weeks now, should be back any day. But last year's major free agent acquisition, Quinton Byfield, this year's one of our two big free agent acquisitions, Alex Bocage, and prospect, who's now kind of just a everyday player for us, Frank Nazar, are all going to be banged up for the majority of December. And in the case of Bocage, it's going to be likely next year before he's able to make his debut for the Blackhawks. So hopefully we can survive the injuries to our front line. Those recent injuries have enabled us to bring up Julian Mays, former top draft pick of ours, and he'll be making his NHL debut in the coming weeks, as well as Jordan Forget, who got caught in a numbers game and was sent down to the minors at the start of this season. Quite honestly, if Forget plays well, there is a chance that it may be time to move on from Frank Nazar when he's ready to come back from the IL. Not sure how much trade value he has at this point. Former first-round draft pick of the Blackhawks. And he's been up with us for 4 years now, but you can see he's progressively played less and less each year. His game ratings have been moving in the wrong direction. And he just hasn't developed that promise he showed as a 22-year-old when we brought him right up to the NHL after he finished his college career at Michigan. Had 36 points in 82 games that year. Since then, in parts of 3 seasons, he's totaled just 40 points for us. Certainly getting less ice time. And certainly as the Blackhawks have gotten better, he's kind of moved down to typically be a fourth-line guy for us. But I think that, as I mentioned, particularly if Forget plays well, or Adam Jecko, who has been splitting at times playing time with Nazar through the first couple months of the season, if those guys take advantage and really play well over the next few weeks, possible we may need to either try to sneak Nazar into the minors or more likely see what, if anything, we can pick up for him in trade. But a lot can happen between now and then. We could have more injuries and need him on the roster when we come back. Taking a look at the schedule here for the month of December, got 3 road games to start, and then home for a week, away for a week, and then home around the holidays, which will be nice for the Blackhawks players. And the first couple weeks of December have gone fine for the Blackhawks. We've won 3 and lost 2 overall. Team was starting to get close to being healthy. You can see Byfield is now day-to-day, Nazar a week or 2 away. But in our past game, the rookie defenseman Roy Chung just suffered an injury. Strained ACL, going to be out 1 to 2 months. Not something that we're going to push him through, so we are not going to delay his treatment. Unfortunately, earlier today, before we got that information, we had to place our defenseman Tyson Buksowski on waivers to make room to bring Matteo Rotundi back to the team. Obviously, I wish we hadn't done that in retrospect. Let's see, can we put him back? Looks like we can put him right back on the Chicago roster. So maybe no harm, no foul, since it was all the same day. So it gives us a little bit of extra depth there. Allows us to put Chung onto the injury list now. And hopefully we can string some wins together here over the second half of the month. And we've got some good news. Quinton Byfield ready to return, and Victor Eklund, who's been banged up for the last few games, also looks like he's going to be 100% now. So it'll be good to have both of them back. Eklund we kept on the roster the last few days while he's been banged up. Need to decide who to send down, and probably fortunately for Frank Nazar and unfortunately for Julian Mays and Jordan Forget, they've both been pretty bad since they came up. Mays, no points scored, -3 in 4 games. And Forget, no points scored, -4 in 3 games. So neither of them has really impressed, quite honestly, which is unfortunate for them. I think we will send Mays back down to the AHL first. That'll allow us to put Byfield back onto the roster. Our top center is back, and Nazar should be back shortly, which will force us to make a decision likely between him and Forget, given that Adam Dzeko has continued to be relatively productive as a third and fourth line right winger for us. And Nazar now ready for full contact, which hopefully will help, because I think I did mention that the team's been struggling a little more recently. We did win against Arizona to start the month off, 4-2. Since then, however, we're just 1-4. Beat the Rangers on the road a week ago, but it was a pretty rough road trip, 1-3 for us. Do have 4 straight home games now to finish off the calendar year of 2029. So hopefully we can get things started with these 2 games versus Edmonton here on Christmas, and then again 2 days later. And Frank Nazar is back and healthy, so we're going to move him onto the active roster. And then we've got a decision to make. As I mentioned, Forget has not been great, -3 in the 4 games that he's played with us. And I believe we can get him down to the AHL without having to clear waivers still. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Forget had been playing better. Maybe there would be a decision to make, but right now, Nazar is going to play once a week maybe for us when people are banged up or a little winded. And then clearly once we get to the point where Bocage is back and ready to make his debut, then we may have a more significant decision to make about Frank Nazar's future with the Blackhawks. Happy New Year, 2030. A new decade begins. And Blackhawks continue to sell a lot of jerseys. Wallstedt, the goalie, Hughes, Marner, Byfield, and Johnson remain the most popular. Looking at the NHL in general, 6 of the 10 most popular jerseys are Chicago Blackhawks. So we remain a extremely popular team, not just in the Midwest, but broadly across the United States. Take a quick look at the development report, and guys on the NHL team, Eklund, Rinzel, Sillinger, and Vesely among the young guys who were getting better over the past month. The veteran Mitch Marner, who may be in his final months with the Blackhawks, our captain, but he's looking for a lot of money next year. That said, he has been productive this year with 37 points, including 16 goals in the 40 games that he has played. Bit of a bounce-back year for him after a significant chunk of the season was lost to injury last year. We did okay on that homestand to finish off the month of December. We got 6 points in 4 games. Kind of did it in a weird way, though. We won 2. And then we had a couple of overtime losses to Edmonton and Ottawa. So probably would have preferred that we were just 3-1, but the 2-0-2 overtime loss record still gets us to 6 points. That said, we did lose a little bit of ground in the month of December. Our 60 points is now second best in the Western Conference behind the Canucks, second best in all of hockey. So we have slipped one spot in the standings, and the Canucks actually do have a game in hand on us and 4 more wins than us. So it's definitely going to be a challenge to get by them. 6 overtime losses this year, which is tied for third in all of hockey, behind just the Islanders with 10 and then the Devils with 7. And then there's a few other teams like us that have 6 overtime losses. Didn't have too many of them last year when we won the President's Trophy. Certainly think we can still get to that goal this year, but certainly winning those close games and not settling for the point in overtime, especially at home, is probably the preferred path if you're trying to get up to 105, 110, 115 kind of point seasons and competing for that President's Trophy. Taking a look at the attendance here, and we've had 21 home sellouts, and our home average is exactly the capacity of the brand new Old School Sports Arena. So we continue to sell out every game at home. You can see we're at 108% capacity. Also, people pretty interested in seeing the mighty Blackhawks on the road, so that is good. Taking a look at the prospective schedule for the month of January here. You can see we've got 6 games now before we get to the All-Star break. Then we'll play a few more at that after that, all at home. Not a bad schedule for the month, with 6 of our 9 games being at home. And then we'll get into February, where we'll be playing for about a week and a half, and then the league will take a break for the Olympics. And a nice start to the new year here for the Blackhawks, with wins over Colorado and St. Louis, so victories over divisional opponents. Bad news is that Victor Eklund, who is a pretty important part of our offense, although he hasn't been all that productive this year, torn elbow ligament. We can delay treatment for him. He's going to be out indefinitely. I think we probably just need to suck it up and move on and let the youngster begin his rehabilitation right away. Taking a look at things right now, he's obviously at 1% fitness. Now, if we force him to play through this, he'll certainly come back at a number higher than that. But an indefinite injury and a torn elbow ligament, I just don't think that's the type of thing to make a 23-year-old who we recently signed to a 6-year extension play through. It's been a disappointing year for him, and it's certainly going to weaken an already kind of problematic left wing position for us. He was typically playing on the second line behind Kent Johnson, who's our number 1 left winger. Certainly going to necessitate some other decisions for us. Paul Cotter certainly is capable of playing on the second line, and I think Mathis Dubé certainly can play on the third line, but could mean more time in the lineup for the likes of a Tomas Vesely or a Frank Nazar, getting some action at left wing until Bocage is ready to come back. And then even when that happens, somebody particularly like Nazar, who we were talking about potentially moving on from not all that long ago, given the fact that he can play all 3 wing positions at a somewhat proficient or very proficient level, may mean that he stays on the team a little longer. The other option, of course, though, is that we could look to the trade market for some help, particularly with the fact that Eklund's going to be going on to the IL. So continue to have some interesting decisions to make with this team, but we are not going to delay treatment for Mr. Eklund, and we are going to get him right on to the IL, with it being an indefinite injury. Find it very unlikely that he will be back for any potential playoff run, but it's only January 6th. You never know. And as I said, that serious injury and the fact that we're trying to win a championship this year may encourage us to do something in the trade market. We do have some excess first-round picks from our trade in the offseason of Matty Beniers, trading him away. But in the meantime, Julian Mays, who was up a few weeks ago for a while, played in 4 games, now going to get another chance to be skating at the NHL level rather than back in the AHL, at least over the near term. And we did just beat the Red Wings, who are also one of the top teams in hockey, finishing up that 3-game homestand to begin the year. And Mitch Marner played in his 1,000th game in the NHL, got 2 assists, so the veteran continues to be pretty productive. And actually got a shorthanded goal from Nazar back in the lineup with the injury that we talked about to Mr. Eklund. He was playing as our 4th-line left winger, as I thought he may be. And interesting timing here. Alex Bocage finally ready to come back, which is really good because he can also play left wing in addition to right wing, and he's very proficient at both of those positions. So the thought bringing him on board was that he was going to be a right winger for us this year, but honestly, with the injuries that we have suffered, may make more sense to play him on the left side, because I do think there is a argument to be made that that would allow us to move Cotter down to the 3rd line and Dubé to the 4th line and get Nazar back out of the starting lineup. I think that's what we may do. So the first thing we need to do is get Mr. Bocage on to the active roster, and he'll get to play hopefully in our... Actually, he may not play because he's, I'm guessing, only going to be at 80% fitness for this final game before the All-Star break. There's part of me that wants to just get him in the lineup. There's part of me that doesn't want to be playing a guy coming off of an injury who's less than 100%. I think that part of me is going to be what wins. We'll send Mays back down to Rockford. He did not play while he was up. And we are going to have Bocage sit out this final game before the All-Star break, even though he's theoretically healthy. Don't think there's any reason to push things with him. So we're on the road in Dallas. Would certainly love to finish up with a win, which we get. So 5-1 here in the month of January, 3-0 at home, 2-1 on the road as we approach the All-Star break. Once again have the most points in hockey, 70-69 over Vancouver, but they do have a game in hand on us and more wins than us. So they are still in a pretty strong position. But the first half of January has gone really well. Now we'll get a little bit of time off and see if we can finish up with those games against Minnesota, Montreal, and the Rangers at home, and potentially have a 7-2 or 8-1 record for the month of January, which would be very nice results on the ice for the Blackhawks. And defenseman rookie Roy Chung is now healthy, so Victor Eklund, the only one on the IL, and I think it's pretty unlikely we'll see him again this year. I guess this may not have been the All-Star break. Kind of weird that we have this long, almost 2-week stretch without any games in the middle of the season, but there haven't been any All-Stars announced. We're also 51 games into the year since we started early because of the Olympics that are coming up. I guess maybe the All-Star team will be announced about the time of the Olympics, and maybe there's not an All-Star game because of the Olympics. I'm not really sure about all of the scheduling quirks, but Roy Chung is back, so that's going to allow us to now try to get Buksowski down to the AHL. Hopefully no one will claim him from us, and then we're kind of running with our team at this point. You can see our backup goalie, Philip Svedeback, has a minor facial cut. He's not available, but he has only played in 9 games this year as Wallstat, and his excellent performance have definitely settled the battle between the goalies, at least for the foreseeable future, as to who the number one is. So the good news is that we'll start getting to see Mr. Bocage coming out of the little break that we had right here, and we are going to actually, as I talked about, set his position to left wing, and presumably he is going to slide in as our number 2 left winger behind Kent Johnson. So the two big free agent acquisitions we made last season, we ended up converting them both to left wingers, Johnson from center and Bocage from right wing. Certainly possible that Bocage will be back on the right side next year. Marner's in the last year of his contract. We've been talking about potentially moving on from Nazar. But for the time being, this season with left winger Victor Eklund out, I think it makes sense to have Bocage make his debut on the left side on the second line alongside our center Dylan Larkin, and then Will Shields will be the second line right winger. There was a chance he was going to move to the third line if we had Bocage playing right wing, but now those guys will be line mates at least for the rest of this season, most likely. And unfortunately, Tyson Buksowski was claimed. We're hoping to sneak him through. Didn't really want to have to trade him. Obviously, in retrospect, that would have been the smart thing to do. Good, solid 23-year-old defenseman. Liked having him in the system to kind of give us some depth when we had some injuries, but hopefully there will not be too many injuries the rest of the year. And as I have talked about, we're at 75.5 million on the roster right now. So with the fact that the moderately paid Eklund is likely to be on the IL for the rest of the year, we will have capacity to take on some contract in trade if that's the path that we decide to go down. Would think it would be more likely a forward, but if we do have some injuries over the next month and a half or so, actually less than a month and a half until the trade deadline, we've got an opportunity to bring a defenseman on board if we think that's the right decision. And hopefully this is a sign of things to come, but the first game where we finally had Bocage in the lineup and we were playing him as our second line left winger, a 10-3 victory over the Wild, and 2 goals and 2 assists from Bocage in his first action with the Blackhawks, and the fellow free agent acquisition from this offseason, Kent Johnson, with 2 goals and assists. So the 2 new additions, the 2 big new additions, finally playing together for the first time, and seems like it went well to have them both in the lineup. So as the month of February begins, looks like we've got 5 games, 3 at home before the break for the Olympics, and presumably there's going to be some type of all-star announcement at some point. We're well into the season at this point, February 1st, and 54 games into the season, so the season's 2/3 over. At some point, you would think they would let us know who the all-stars are. Tied with the Canucks now at 73 for the most points in all of hockey. We have a game in hand on them now, which is positive, but they do have 3 more wins than us, and the Jets in our own division also have more wins than us at this point. So probably going to have to outpoint both of those teams to avoid going to a tiebreaker with the number of wins, which with the large number of overtime losses that we have put up at this point is probably not a tiebreaker that would go in our favor. And checking in here at the beginning of February, owner confidence update. Rocky Wirtz thinks the season's been successful so far, on track for a championship, serious contender. It should be a contender again next year. Fans are thrilled with how we're doing. Looking at team harmony, the locker room still harmonious. No unpopular, disruptive, or selfish players, which is good. Job security is still really high, and fan happiness is close to peak, and actually was a peak before we lost those last couple of games of the month of January. So things are going really well. We've got back-to-back games against Nashville at home today, and then we're flying south to Tampa tomorrow. So we will see if we can hopefully, win maybe 3 out of these last 5 games before taking a break for the Olympics. And we did check in briefly just to share with the viewers as far as the trading block. Most talented player by far on the block is Pavel Mintyukov, 26-year-old defenseman, very dynamic playmaker. Don't really know why Anaheim has him on the trade block, because he signed for another 3 years, under $4 million a year. And when I checked in on him, Anaheim said that they were in a win-now mode, so why they would look to trade him, don't completely understand. But even with 3 first-round picks, they weren't even sniffing that they would consider trading him to us. So nothing to do there right now. A couple of older centers also on the trade block. I would expect that as we get out of the next couple of weeks and then past the Olympics, probably going to be some more players available to potentially chase after. And while there's not necessarily a ton on the trade market right now, I think we may put in a waiver claim on left wing / right winger Jet Luchanko from the Hurricanes. Hasn't been all that productive with them, but looks like a pretty well-balanced forward, a little bit of offensive skill, pretty good defensively, pretty sound physically. His mental ratings are kind of the weakest part of his game, but not that bad. But he's really proficient at playing both left wing and right wing. He's signed for this season and next season at a pretty reasonable $2.4 million. I don't even know that he's a starter for us, but would we prefer him over Frank Nazar? Possibly, because I think that Jet gives us better defensive ratings. Would we prefer him over Tomas Vesely? Maybe, because Vesely is just not getting a lot of playing time with us. I think the move would be actually to move Vesely down to the AHL, where he could get some more consistent playing time if that waiver claim went through. And again, I don't really necessarily think that Luchanko is going to be a big-time player for us. I think he's, a healthy scratch quite often, and then he's a fourth-line player for us. But I think with the versatility to play on either the left or the right side, and the fact that he's pretty solid defensively, he could be a guy who could help us this year, and certainly a guy who can also help us next year, potentially. So we're going to go ahead and put in a claim on him, and we'll see what happens with that. In the meantime, we've got a game against Anaheim. It would be nice to get a W against one of the other top teams in the Western Conference. Right now, we're 2 games behind Vancouver, and Anaheim is second in the Pacific Division. We're only a point clear on the Jets at this point, although we do have the game in hand. So it would be nice to make that game in hand against Anaheim pretty productive. And things went well. We did get a 6-2 win there against Anaheim, and we did have our claim for Luchanko go through. And I do kind of like the way that they describe it. We're hoping to find a diamond in the rough in him. Again, like the fact that he's versatile and very competent at both the left wing and the right wing position. I think as a guy to occasionally play on the fourth line, he fits well. And Vesely just has not been playing much recently, and that -7 in 22 games played indicates that maybe the jump right from the Swedish league to the NHL at the age of 21 was a little aggressive for him. So we are going to send him down to the AHL. And even with that addition of salary associated with bringing Jet Luchanko on board, think that we are still in a position where if we want to bring on some salary as we get closer to the trade deadline, we certainly can. And we ended up losing our final game to the Capitals at home 5-3 before the Olympics getting started, which begins today. Byfield out day to day with a minor facial cut. Not sure if that will impact his ability to be playing in the Olympics. And Dylan Larkin, with a couple of goals, got to 400 in his career. He's been our second line center this year, so he's kind of been demoted a bit, but still has been healthy and productive. 26 goals, 23 assists, 49 points total, plus 15 on the year in 53 games, playing about a minute less per game than he did last year, but pretty good production for the 33-year-old, and hopefully we can keep him healthy through the rest of the season. Take a quick look at the standings before we finish things up, and 35, 17, and 7, 77 points is now third in hockey, as both the Canucks and the Flyers are tied for the most points in hockey with 79, and we're only 1 point free of the Jets for the top spot in the Central Division, and they do have more wins than us. So again, that's a team that we're going to want to avoid a tie in the standings with as far as points. But we're in pretty good shape. I think that, playoffs certainly not locked up with 23 games to go. But if we look at the Western Conference standings, we're up 12 points on being out of the playoffs. So with 23 games to go, that's not a insurmountable hill for some of our opponents to climb, but certainly feeling like we're absolutely going to be a playoff team. Goal differential of plus 35 is actually only tied for third best in the Western Conference, behind Vancouver and Winnipeg, the two teams that we're actually trying to compete with for the most points in the division. And we're tied with Arizona, who are 9 points behind us in the standings. So it looks like they've gotten a little unlucky. Maybe we have gotten a bit lucky so far. And we'll hope that we continue to remain lucky going forward. Hopefully the players that we do have who are going out on international duty will be healthy and successful. You can see both of our goalies there. Looks like with the injuries, Quinn Hughes, who's been sitting out the last couple days with a lacerated hand, probably going to miss out on the Olympics, unfortunately for him. Sam Rinzel, our young winger playing for the U.S. Kent Johnson for Canada. Dylan Larkin for the U.S., Adam Jecko for the Czech Republic, and Mitch Marner, of course, for Canada. So pretty good representation in the Olympics. Kind of crazy that both of our goalies, our two goalies, are the two goalies for Sweden in the Olympics. So feel like we definitely have the best that Sweden has to offer as our netminders, and it's been that way for the past few seasons. So the year is going well. We will come back in our next episode and see what happens in the Olympics, what, if anything, we decide to do as we get close to the trade deadline, and then we'll wrap up the regular season and see if we can pick up a few points in the standings on both Vancouver and Philadelphia and try to wrap up a second consecutive President's Trophy for these Blackhawks. And we'll find the answers to all of those questions in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.